up today, the United Nations has delayed a vote on tough new North Korea sanctions at Russia's request. The vote will be held on Wednesday in New York. North Korea boycotts the ongoing session of the UN Human Rights Council. It says it will not be bound by any resolutions that punish the regime for its rights abuses. First, South Korea's opposition bloc is expected to end its 8-day-long filibuster in the coming hours. When they finish, the National Assembly will likely vote on a handful of pending bills, including a government-backed anti-terrorism bill. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Wednesday, March 2nd here in Seoul. Thank you ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this morning, the United Nations Security Council has delayed its meeting to vote on the new resolution on North Korea's recent nuclear and long-range missile tests. Originally set for Tuesday afternoon, it will now take place on Wednesday morning at the UN headquarters in New York. Officials say Russia requested the postponement due to procedural reasons. The conventional rule is that following the 15-member Council's agreement on a draft resolution, a so-called blue text is printed, upon which a vote must wait 24 hours. Once put to a vote, the resolution is expected to be passed unanimously. The sanctions would massively toughen existing ones, including mandatory inspections of cargo, expansion of the banning of weapons, export restrictions, and blacklisting a bunch of North Korean individuals and entities. Now, the draft resolution on North Korea was one of the main topics of discussion during UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon's closed-door meeting Tuesday with Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Geneva. Russian officials say Ban and Lavrov talked about the planned UN sanctions on Pyongyang for its recent provocations and other issues related to the Korean Peninsula. Ban and Lavrov are in Switzerland for the ongoing session of the UN Human Rights Council. Now, in Moscow, senior Russian diplomats met with the US ambassador to Russia for talks on the North Korea sanctions. Russia has said that it's yet to make a final decision on the draft resolution, but it has signaled that there would be no problem providing its demands are considered by the Security Council. North Korea has declared its intent to boycott the UN Human Rights Council. Pyongyang's Foreign Minister Lee Soo-young made the announcement in Geneva on Tuesday local time. The North Korean official said his country would no longer take part in international sessions which apply double standards and single out North Korea's human rights situation. In particular, he slammed the council, saying it had become contaminated with political point scoring and selectivity. Now, the UN Human Rights Council has repeatedly taken issue with North Korea's human rights abuses and released an extensive report back in 2014, which accused the North Korean leadership of being involved in wide-ranging crimes against humanity. President Park Geun-hye has invited North Korea back for talks despite the hostile inter-Korean climate caused by Pyongyang's recent nuclear and missile provocations. She had one clear condition, though. North Korea should first abandon its nuclear ambitions. Our presidential office correspondent Song Ji-sun with this report.
President Park Geun-hye revived her vision for unification in her Independence Movement Day address on Tuesday, saying unifying the two Koreas is the way to continue the legacy of those who fought for independence 97 years ago.
우리가 통일을 염원하는 이유는 핵무기 없는 세상의 비전이 한반도에서 시작되고 우리가 누리고 있는 자유와 인권, 번영을 북한 동포들도 함께 나눌 수 있도록 하기 위해서입니다. 정부는 평화와 번영, 자유의 물결이 넘치는 새로운 한반도를 만들어 갈 것이며 그것이 바로 3.1운동 정신의 승화라고 굳게 믿고 있습니다.
After taking a stern stance on North Korea following its fourth nuclear test and long-range missile launch, President Park left the door open for dialogue, saying it's up to Pyongyang now, but that its pursuit of nuclear weapons will only bring about an end to the regime.
앞으로 우리 정부는 대화의 문을 닫지는 않을 것이지만 북한이 비핵화 의지를 보이지 않고 변화를 거부하는 한 우리와 국제사회의 압박은 계속될 것입니다. 정부는 앞으로 더욱 확고한 안보 태세와 국제 공조를 바탕으로 북한이 반드시 핵을 포기할 수밖에 없도록 만들어 갈 것입니다. 이제 선택은 북한의 몫입니다.
Referring to Seoul and Tokyo's settlement of the wartime sexual slavery issue, reached at the end of last year, President Park said Tokyo must sincerely fulfill its pledges to open a new chapter of bilateral relations, and that Japan must acknowledge history and its past wrongdoing. Pointing to her initiative for improving Korea's economic fundamentals, President Park says she will move forward with her major reform drives and emphasize that labor reform is the most important way to create more jobs for Korea's young people. 송지선, Arirang News.
Now, a South Korea-based think tank has warned that North Korea could be readying to carry out yet another nuclear test. It says the potential for such a large-scale provocation so soon after the regime's last test in January cannot be ruled out. EG1 with the details.
Less than 2 months after North Korea conducted its fourth nuclear test, new data suggests the communist state may be preparing for another one. According to a report published by the state-run Korea Institute for Defense Analysis, movement at the North's Punggye-ri nuclear test site shows at least 3 more nuclear tests may be possible. The latest analysis by the think tank carries weight. It also foreshadowed North Korea's claimed H-bomb test 3 days before it was conducted in early January. According to data it gathered, tests on 2 fission bombs and a hydrogen bomb seem to be a possibility. This is because an underground mine in the southern area of the test site, as well as another freshly dug mine, seem to be undergoing preparations for potential future testing. The think tank points out that the mines look to go deep underground and have only one tunnel, which implies efforts to reduce the spread of radiation from a massive type of explosion. And if the North does carry out a 5th nuclear test, KIDA says its next move will not be a test, but an actual nuclear bomb. The report urged that talks or sanctions on North Korea must be worked out fully to also include the removal of a graphite motor-rated reactor in Yongbyon, which is the North's key means of producing tritium and plutonium. 이지원, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's main opposition party says it's finally ending the longest filibuster in the country's history. An admirable effort on the part of the Minju Party, but the delay tactic fails to accomplish its objective, namely blocking the passage of a controversial anti-terror act. Shin Se-min with the details.
The main opposition Minju Party of Korea said late Tuesday that it will suspend the more than a week-long filibuster as the session cannot be an obstacle in preparing for the parliamentary election next month. The filibuster will be suspended with opposition floor leader Lee Jong-geol becoming the last speaker. The announcement came after opposition lawmakers met in an emergency general meeting for hours where few were apparently opposed to ending the filibuster. Once the opposition ends the procedure, the contentious counterterrorism bill will automatically be put to a full floor voting. And in that case, the bill that had put an all-stop to the parliament for the past week would most likely get passed, as the ruling Saenuri Party holds 157 seats in the 293-member parliament. Following the announcement, the ruling Saenuri Party welcomed the decision to stop the filibuster, adding the party will swiftly move to put pending issues for plenary voting session. Saenuri Party floor leader Won Yu-chul added, however, that the party would not allow any more revisions to the counterterrorism bill. The Minju Party had been objecting to the part of the bill that says it would give the National Intelligence Service more power to conduct surveillance on the public. The ruling Saenuri Party, however, claims the bill should pass as is to better protect the country amid the growing threats from North Korea and international terrorism. With the filibuster coming to an end, it is likely that other pending bills like the new electoral map and North Korean human rights will also be put to full floor voting. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
So, as Se-min just told us there, the main opposition Minju Party of Korea has decided to end its record-breaking filibuster, which is aimed at blocking the passage, at least in its original form, of that controversial anti-terrorism bill. But it might not be over just yet. That's because the ball is now in the minor opposition Justice Party's court. Two of the party's lawmakers are still scheduled to give drawn-out speeches at the National Assembly. Now, if they decide to put in marathon speeches, the opening of a plenary session at the Assembly could be pushed back even further. Now, once parliamentary activities have been normalised, lawmakers are set to vote on the anti-terrorism bill as well as a redrawn electoral map. The Justice Party has expressed its regret over the main opposition party's decision to call time on its filibuster. Now, Korea's exports are now in their longest downward slide in history. And with the global economy continuing to slow down, experts aren't holding out much hope for a turnaround anytime soon. Kim Min-ji has the numbers.
It's another slump. According to the Trade Ministry, Korea's exports fell over 12% in January from the same month last year to $36.4 billion. That marks the 14th straight month of decline and the longest downward streak ever, replacing the previous record of 13 months from March 2001. The ministry attributed the fall to low global oil prices and slow global economic growth, especially in China. Exports of petroleum products and petrochemicals drove the decline, while falling export prices also pulled the figure down. But thanks to an uptick in shipments of mobile devices and computers, the February figure marks an improvement from the previous month, when exports fell over 18%, the biggest yearly drop in more than 6 years.
Among the outbound shipments that increased, exports of computers went up due to growing demand for PC exchanges, while wireless devices also rose thanks to the launch of new products.
Imports, on the other hand, slid nearly 15% on year to $29 billion in February, due mainly to a slump in shipments of raw materials and capital goods. As a result, last month's trade surplus amounted to $7.4 billion, extending the surplus streak for the 49th straight month. However, what's worrisome is that the surpluses have mainly been driven by a sharp decrease in imports, rather than an increase in exports.
The global economy is facing difficulty, and as these conditions linger, it's hard to say Korea's exports will make a major improvement.
The government is vowed to do all it can to boost the country's outbound shipments, but experts predict the downward trend will continue throughout the first half of the year. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, voting is underway on Super Tuesday in the United States. 12 states are casting their votes for candidates from either the Republican or Democratic parties. Donald Trump is way out in front on the Republican side, and Hillary Clinton is ahead in the Democratic race. Now, Bernie Sanders will be aiming to secure enough delegates to stop Clinton becoming the de facto Democratic standard-bearer after Tuesday's voting. If Trump wins big, he could almost guarantee being the Republican nominee, but Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz will be hoping for good results themselves. The first Super Tuesday polls will close in around 3 hours from now. The Geneva Motor Show, it's one of the biggest international motor shows in the world, and it's open to the press, with some of the biggest names in supercars launching a handful of new models. The most eye-catching is Bugatti's Chiron. It takes over from its predecessor, the Veyron, as the fastest road car ever built. It has a top speed at an eye-watering 420 kilometers per hour, and it can be yours if you have the $2.6 million required to buy it in your bank account. Lamborghini has also revealed its latest model, aptly named the Centenario. It celebrates the company's 100th birthday. Now, on the opposite end of the emissions scale, there were plenty of green cars on display as well, Korea's Hyundai and Kia also showcased their eco-credentials with 2 new hybrid cars, the Ioniq and the Niro. Well, those are stories we have for you at this hour. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out the website, arirang.com/news. You'll find all the latest stories there. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.